The stage was set, the audience eagerly awaiting what was promised to be a typical political debate between two fierce voices in the public eye. But no one could have predicted the shocking twist that was about to unfold. Jasmine Crockett, a rising, political star known for her bold opinions and fiery rhetoric, was seated across from Pam Bondi, a seasoned political figure with years of experience in the public eye. The two had clashed before in public debates, but today was different. There was an unspoken tension in the air, a sense that something was about to break. As the show began, the familiar back and forth of politics took its usual course. Crockett passionately argued for her policies, calling for more progressive action in the government, while Bondi countered with her conservative stance, highlighting the dangers of overreach and the importance of preserving traditional values. The audience, accustomed to these ideological duels, was fully engaged. But something was about to change, something no one was expecting. Pam Bondi, calm and collected, leaned forward slightly, her eyes narrowing as she prepared to speak. Her voice was measured, but there was an unmistakable edge to it. "Jasmine, you've made quite a name for yourself recently," she began, her tone friendly enough, but with a hint of something else lurking beneath. "But there's something that many people don't know about you, something that you've conveniently kept hidden." The words hit the air like a thunderclap, and for a moment, the room fell silent. The audience, unsure if they had heard correctly, waited in suspended anticipation. Was this just another rhetorical trick, a bold move meant to throw Crockett off balance? Or was Bondi about to expose something more personal, more damning? Crockett's eyes narrowed, a flash of unease flickering across her face, but she quickly masked it with her trademark confidence. "What are you talking about, Pam?" she responded, her voice still strong but laced with a subtle tension. "This is just another one of your cheap tricks, isn't it?" Bondi's smile was cool, almost predatory. "Oh, no tricks here, Jasmine. Just facts. You see, your past isn't as spotless as you'd like everyone to believe." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "In fact, there are things in your past that would surprise a lot of people. Things you've worked very hard to keep out of the public eye." The room seemed to hold its breath. What was Bondi about to reveal? Crockett's confident facade had cracked just slightly, and that was enough to send a ripple of anticipation through the audience. Bondi knew this was the moment. She wasn't just debating policy anymore. She was playing a much higher stakes game. She could feel the eyes of everyone in the room on her, but she wasn't afraid. She had the power now. Jasmine Crockett, normally quick-witted and unflappable, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She was no longer in control of the conversation, and that was a rare thing for her. The once rowdy crowd grew noticeably quieter, sensing that something big was coming. A single, almost imperceptible bead of sweat slid down Crockett's temple. She wasn't used to being caught off guard. Pam Bondi saw it, the flicker of vulnerability. She pressed further. "You've spent so much time positioning yourself as a champion for the people, but how many people know the truth about your past? How many know the real you, Jasmine?" The audience was hanging on every word, the tension rising as Bondi took a deliberate breath. "I'll tell you something, Jasmine. People might not know that you have a history that you've worked tirelessly to bury. A history that involves—" She let the sentence hang in the air, eyes locked on Crockett, waiting for her to react. Crockett's face had turned a shade paler. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. The room had become so silent it felt as though even the air had stopped moving. What was Bondi about to say? Was this the beginning of the end for Crockett's carefully crafted public image? The audience, gripped with anticipation, waited for the revelation. Was this the moment when everything would unravel for Crockett? Or would she be able to regain control and fight back? The stage had shifted. This was no longer just a debate. It was something much more personal. The stakes had been raised, and everyone in the room knew it. Bondi had thrown down the gauntlet. Now it was Crockett's turn to respond. The silence that enveloped the studio was thick, almost suffocating. The audience, usually quick to react, was frozen in place, unsure of what they had just heard. Bondi's words hung in the air, hanging over everyone like a storm cloud, threatening to unleash the inevitable. Jasmine Crockett shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her eyes darting across the stage as though searching for an escape or a way to regain her footing. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words didn't come immediately. This wasn't just a disagreement over policies or ideals. This was an attack on her character, on the very foundation of her public identity. Pam Bondi, sensing the shift, pressed on with calculated precision. "You think you can keep hiding from the truth, Jasmine? You've done a good job of sweeping your past under the rug, but no one can outrun their history forever. Especially not when it's this big." The audience leaned forward, hanging on to every word. Bondi had struck a nerve, and the tension in the room was palpable. There was no laughter now, no light-hearted banter. The gravity of the moment weighed heavily on everyone present. This was more than a political discussion. It was personal. Crockett took a slow, measured breath, trying to regain control of her emotions. Her trademark confidence was slipping, and she knew it. For the first time in her career, she wasn't in control of the narrative. The stakes had never been higher. "Pam, what are you talking about?" Jasmine finally managed to say, her voice strained but firm. "I don't know what you think you've uncovered, but it's not going to work. You're just trying to distract people from the real issues, from the fight that matters." Bondi smiled, the look in her eyes cold and calculating. "No, Jasmine, I'm not distracting anyone. I'm bringing attention to something that's been kept hidden for far too long, something that directly contradicts everything you've claimed to stand for." Jasmine's eyes narrowed, but the fear behind them was becoming more visible. This wasn't some minor scandal Bondi was hinting at. This was a deep, personal secret that could undo everything Crockett had worked for. She could feel the heat rising to her face as the weight of Bondi's insinuations pressed down on her. "You don't get to decide what matters, Pam," Jasmine snapped, her voice now more forceful, though the crack in it betrayed her unease. "I'm here to talk about the issues that affect the people, not my past." But Bondi wasn't backing down. "Oh, but your past affects everything, Jasmine. Everything. You can't separate who you were from who you claim to be now. The public deserves to know the full truth." There was a moment of stillness as the room waited for Crockett to respond. Her face, once full of determination, was now betraying a flicker of uncertainty. Was Bondi about to reveal something truly damning, or was she merely trying to unsettle her opponent? The uncertainty of it all hung like a heavy fog over the studio. Jasmine took another deep breath, straightening up in her chair as if preparing for the storm that was about to break. "You can't intimidate me with these petty attacks, Pam. It's not going to work. People are smarter than that. They know when someone's trying to deflect from the real issues." Bondi chuckled, the sound low and mocking. "Deflect? Oh, no. Jasmine, this isn't deflection. This is about exposing the truth you've been hiding for years. And the truth is—" She paused, allowing the tension to build even further. "The truth is, your past is filled with contradictions. You can't keep pretending to be the person you claim to be while burying the skeletons that are lurking in the closet." The room fell even quieter, the anticipation hanging heavier than ever. Every person in that audience, from the crew to the viewers at home, was waiting for the bombshell to drop. What could Bondi possibly be referring to? What had Crockett done, or hidden, that was so catastrophic? Jasmine's eyes were now wide, and for the first time, there was an unmistakable flicker of fear behind them. Bondi's words had cut deep, and the realization was dawning on her that she might not be able to recover from this. The smooth, controlled politician she had always been was no longer in command of the narrative. Pam Bondi had control now, and she was wielding it with ruthless precision. Jasmine opened her mouth to speak again, but the words didn't come. She was struggling, and it was becoming painfully clear. The audience could see it now. This wasn't just a moment of debate. This was the unraveling of everything Jasmine Crockett had worked for, all thanks to one simple, powerful truth that she had spent years trying to bury. What was that truth? What had Bondi uncovered, and could Jasmine survive the fallout? As the room remained still, Pam Bondi's grip on the moment tightened. The weight of her words lingered in the air, reverberating throughout the studio. Jasmine Crockett, once so poised and untouchable, now looked like a cornered animal, her usual sharp confidence replaced with uncertainty. Bondi, knowing she had the advantage, leaned back slightly in her chair, savoring the tension she had created. The silence in the room was deafening. Every eye was on Crockett, waiting for her, to defend herself, to explain the unexplainable. But what could she say? What could she possibly do to save herself now? The audience's collective breath seemed to freeze. The stakes had shifted. What began as a typical political interview had spiraled into something far more personal, far more damning. Bondi had exposed a fracture in Crockett's carefully constructed image, and the cracks were widening with every passing second. Jasmine opened her mouth, but again, no words came. The effort was painful, like trying to speak while trapped underwater. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her hands now trembling ever so slightly in her lap. This wasn't the confident political figure the audience had grown to admire. This was a woman on the edge, struggling to hold her composure. Bondi, sensing the vulnerability, pressed on. "You know, it's fascinating, Jasmine. All this time you've positioned yourself as a champion for the people. But how can you be trusted to lead when you've spent so much of your life hiding the truth? Hiding the very things you now claim to fight against?" The words stung, each one landing with precision. Crockett's head snapped up, her face flushing, with a mixture of anger and fear. "I have nothing to hide," she shot back, her voice cracking slightly under the pressure. "I'm here because I care about people, not because of whatever you think you found." But Bondi wasn't about to let her off that easy. "Oh, but you do have something to hide, Jasmine. You've spent years covering up the truth about your past, your connections, your dealings, the people you've been involved with. None of it aligns with the innocent image you've worked so hard to sell. Don't act like the rest of us don't see through it." For the first time, Jasmine's demeanor shifted from defensive to pleading. "You don't know what you're talking about, Pam," she said, the words now tinged with desperation. "You're making assumptions, spreading lies." But the audience wasn't buying it. The sense of doubt was spreading like wildfire. Could there be more to Crockett's story than she was willing to admit? Had she been hiding something for years, manipulating the truth to serve her ambitions? Pam Bondi's expression hardened. "Lies? Really, Jasmine?" she asked, the sarcasm dripping from her voice. "Is that how you want to play this? After everything you've done, you're still going to sit there and pretend you've done nothing. Wrong?" Jasmine swallowed hard, the weight of Bondi's words crashing down on her like a tidal wave. There was no escaping it now. The truth was out there, and no amount of denial could change that. But what truth was it? What exactly had Bondi uncovered that could bring down a political figure so quickly, so completely? The audience was on edge. They could feel the shift in the air. What would Crockett do next? Would she crumble under the pressure, or would she find a way to fight back and reclaim control? The tension was unbearable. And then, as if to silence all doubts, Pam Bondi leaned forward, her eyes locking with Crockett's. "I'll tell you what the truth is, Jasmine," she said, her voice cold and cutting. "The truth is that your past isn't just filled with mistakes. It's filled with deliberate actions. You've made choices, dangerous choices, ones that go against everything you claim to stand for now." The words hit like a slap in the face. Jasmine's face paled further, and, for a moment, she looked like she had been physically struck. The anger, the deflection, the bravado, all of it seemed to evaporate in that instant. What had Bondi just revealed? What choices had Crockett made that could be so damaging to her image? The audience leaned in, some even holding their breath, waiting for the inevitable revelation that would shatter the carefully constructed narrative. Crockett had been a symbol of political change, a beacon of hope for her supporters. But now, the question loomed large. Could she survive the truth of her past? Jasmine opened her mouth once again, but no sound came out. Her hands gripped the armrests of her chair as if to steady herself. The eyes of the world were on her now, and the pressure was suffocating. What could she say that would erase the damage already done? Was this the end of her political career? Or could she somehow turn the tables and regain control? The audience waited, the silence growing louder with every passing second. Bondi had exposed a truth that could tear down everything Crockett had worked for. What now? Would Crockett find a way to reclaim the stage? Or was she doomed to remain a shadow of the powerful figure she once was? The silence lingered, a heavy presence that seemed to fill every corner of the studio. The audience was still, watching with bated breath, unsure of what would happen next. Jasmine Crockett, now on the defensive, could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her chest. Her mind raced, her emotions warring inside her. She had never been this vulnerable before, never so exposed in front of the public. Pam Bondi, the predator, stood her ground, eyes fixed on Crockett like a hawk circling its prey. "I told you, Jasmine, the truth always finds a way to come out," she said with a sharp edge in her voice. "You can try to deny it, but you can't escape it forever." Jasmine felt the sting of Bondi's words sink deeper, and for a moment she could barely breathe. The carefully constructed walls she had built around her public persona were crumbling, brick by brick. What was she supposed to do now? How could she regain control when Bondi had already planted the seed of doubt in everyone's mind? The cameras zoomed in, capturing every detail, every flicker of emotion on Jasmine's face. The tension in the room was palpable. What was the truth? What had Bondi uncovered that could be so destructive? Was this truly the end for Crockett, or was there a way for her to fight back? Jasmine took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She knew she had to respond, to do something, anything, to take back control of the situation. But the fear was overwhelming, the uncertainty gnawing at her. If she didn't act now, she might lose everything. She had spent years building her career, but all of it was hanging by a thread. For the first time, she felt truly outmatched. Bondi, seeing her opponent falter, pressed harder. "You think you can sit here and act like nothing's wrong? Like you've done nothing to hide your past? I'm not buying it, and neither is anyone else. You're a walking contradiction, Jasmine. You're pretending to be a fighter for the people, when in reality, you've been involved in shady dealings that only benefit you." The words felt like daggers, each one puncturing the armor Crockett had carefully crafted around herself. How had Bondi managed to uncover so much? Who had been feeding her this information, and why had they waited until now to reveal it? The answers were just out of reach, and yet they seemed to hang over her like a storm cloud, ready to break at any moment. Jasmine's heart pounded in her chest, her mind spinning. The weight of the situation was suffocating. She could feel the sweat gathering on her palms, could feel the clamminess creeping up the back of her neck. How had it all gone so wrong? But she wasn't ready to give up yet. She couldn't. Not after everything she had fought for, everything she had built. There had to be a way out. There had to be a way to turn the tables on Bondi, to reclaim the narrative that was slipping through her fingers. With a deep breath, she lifted her chin, her eyes now burning with determination. "You want to talk about my past, Pam? Fine, but let's talk about the present. Let's talk about what I've done since I've been in office. Let's talk about my work for the people, about the policies I've pushed through to make a real difference. You can try to tear me down with gossip and rumors, but it doesn't change the fact that I'm here to fight for the future." Bondi raised an eyebrow, not expecting this kind of comeback. "You think that's enough?" You think people will forget what's lurking in your past just because you've managed to pass a few policies? Jasmine's jaw tightened. I don't care what. You think? I've been open and transparent about everything that matters. What I've done for this country, for the people, speaks louder than any of your accusations ever will. The room shifted. There was a subtle change in the air, like the audience was beginning to pick sides. Some were nodding in agreement with Jasmine's words, while others were still reeling from the weight of Bondi's accusations. But the pendulum had swung back, and Jasmine had found her footing once again. She wasn't finished. This wasn't over. If Bondi thought she could break her with a few well-timed jabs, she was wrong. Jasmine was stronger than that. The past might have a hold on her, but it wasn't going to define her future. But as the conversation escalated, it became clear that this moment, this confrontation, wasn't just about defending herself. It was about proving that she had what it took to stand her ground in the face of overwhelming odds. It was about showing the world that she wouldn't back down, no matter what. And with that, the tension in the room reached its boiling point. The temperature in the room seemed to rise, the atmosphere electric with anticipation. The studio, usually filled with light-hearted banter, was now heavy with the weight of the moment. Everyone was watching. Everyone was waiting. The stakes had never been higher. This wasn't just a political interview anymore. This was personal. And in that charged space, everything had come down to one thing. Who would walk away victorious? Pam Bondi's expression remained a mask of calculated poise, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. Jasmine Crockett, despite the earlier stumble, had found her voice. She had turned the tables in a way that no one, not even Bondi, had expected. The narrative was no longer just about the past. It was now about the future, and Jasmine was making sure that she wasn't going down without a fight. Bondi tried to regain her footing, launching one final verbal assault. "You think you've won, don't you, Jasmine?" she sneered. "You think you can spin this all into some victory for yourself. But let's be real here. Your past is who you really are. You can't escape it." Jasmine's eyes narrowed, the fire in her gaze unwavering. "No, Pam, you're the one trying to spin a narrative. What you don't understand is that people want real change. They don't care about the same tired accusations you keep recycling. They care about the future, about progress, and that's exactly what I've been working for." For a moment, Bondi's expression faltered. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there. The unshakable confidence she had held moments ago was beginning to crack. The room noticed. The audience could feel the tide shifting. "I've been open about everything that matters," Jasmine continued, her voice now steady, even as she leaned forward, meeting Bondi's gaze directly. "What's more important, Pam? Who I was, or what I'm doing for this country now? I've faced my demons, but I'm not ashamed of who I've become. I'm proud of the work I'm doing. And no matter how hard you try to discredit me, it won't change the fact that I'm making a difference." Bondi clenched her jaw, her eyes hardening. "You think a few speeches and some policy wins make you invincible?" she spat. "You're a hypocrite, Jasmine. And the truth is, no one can outrun their past forever." But Jasmine wasn't backing down. Not now. Not when she could feel the momentum shifting in her favor. "The past doesn't define me, Pam. My actions do. And when people look at me, they don't see some political puppet playing games. They see someone who fights for them. I fight for the people who don't have a voice. That's what really matters." As she spoke, the audience began to stir, a few claps breaking out here and there. Slowly but surely the tide was turning. What had started as a ruthless exposé was beginning to feel like something else. Something that transcended just one woman's past. This was about the fight for power, for control of the narrative, for the future of the country. And Jasmine Crockett had just taken a major step toward reclaiming it. Bondi, realizing she had lost her grip on the moment, stood up abruptly. The movement was sharp, the finality in it unmistakable. "I'm done here," she said, her voice tight with frustration. "This is a waste of my time." Jasmine didn't flinch. She stood as well, her posture strong and unwavering. "Then go ahead, Pam," she said, her voice calm but powerful. "Leave. But remember this moment, this interview. You are the one who's walked away from it, not me." Bondi gave her a sharp, almost dismissive look, before storming off the set, her heels clicking against the floor like a ticking clock, counting down the end of her dominance. As she disappeared from view, the energy in the room shifted completely. What had once been a tense, confrontational scene had now transformed into a resounding victory for Jasmine Crockett. The audience erupted into applause, some cheering, others stunned in silence. But it was clear. Jasmine had just won this battle, not just for herself, but for everyone who had been watching, waiting for her to reclaim control. And as the cameras panned out, capturing the aftermath of the explosive exchange, one thing was undeniable. This confrontation had solidified Jasmine Crockett as a force to be reckoned with. She had faced her demons, fought back against the odds, and walked away victorious. Her secret past, once exposed, was no longer her weakness, it was her strength. And from this moment on, no one would ever doubt her again.